imagine what it's like to be convicted of a crime you didn't commit? To spend 3 decades in solitary confinement, breathing air that may be your last because a court has sentenced you to death. This is the story of Anthony Ray Hinton, a man who became a symbol of fighting injustice and an inspiration to millions. Today we will tell you how an innocent man found himself in the dock, how he felt at that moment, and how 30 years later he managed to prove his innocence. We will find out with what thoughts Hinton lived 30 years on death row, waiting for the end of his life. On February 25th and July 2nd, 1985, 2 fast food restaurant managers, John Davidson and Thomas Wayne Wason, were killed in separate incidents during armed robberies of their fast food restaurants in Birmingham. A survivor of a third restaurant robbery picked out a photo of Anthony Ray Hinton, then 29, in a lineup, and police began searching for him. Police were under intense pressure to find the culprit. At the time, Hinton was working in a supermarket warehouse and living with his mother, Bular Hinton, in her home in rural Alabama, about a half-hour north of Birmingham. Police said the bullets from the crime scene matched a revolver found in Hinton's mother's possession. Shortly after his arrest, Detective Doug Acker told Hinton,
"I don't care if you did it or not. In fact, I believe you didn't do it. But it doesn't matter. If you didn't do it, one of your brothers did it, and you will have to answer for it. I can give you 5 reasons why you will be convicted. 1, you're black. 2, a white man will say you shot him. Number 3, you'll have a white district attorney. Number 4, you'll have a white judge. And number 5, you're going to have an all-white jury."
There were no fingerprints or witnesses to point him out, but that was enough to convict Hinton of 2 murders and sentence him to death. When the judge pronounced the sentence, everything froze inside me. There was only one thought going through my mind. Why? Why me? I know I didn't do it, but who would believe me? At that moment, I felt my life turning into a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. Hinton was defended by a public defender who candidly told him, "You know we're going to lose. It's not about the evidence here, it's about your skin color." Hinton's public defender did not provide adequate advice. Upon meeting with Hinton, he said, "Look, you all say you're innocent. The credibility of the ballistics expert, the only one defense counsel believed he could hire if funds were available, was rebutted by the prosecutor because of the expert's physical limitations and lack of experience." The jury ignored the testimony of Hinton's supervisor, who testified that he was at work at the time of the alleged crimes. The prosecution's only evidence at trial was a statement that ballistics tests showed that 4 bullets from the crime scene matched from Hinton's mother's gun, which was found in her home during the investigation. No fingerprints or witness statements were submitted. Hinton was found guilty of each of the 2 murders and sentenced to death. Anthony's life became an endless wait for death. 30 years in a 2-by-3-meter solitary confinement cell. 30 years without being able to touch his family. During his decades in prison, he was sustained by his mother's belief in his innocence and by the faith of a longtime friend, Lester Bailey, who visited him weekly. He said that every morning he woke up to the sound of the jailer's footsteps, thinking they were coming for him to carry out his sentence. But the worst part was not the physical imprisonment, but the sense of injustice. While on death row, Hinton spent most of his time reading. He organized a book club, which was allowed to meet in the prison's law library. After a few years, the club grew as word spread quickly in the prison that reading was a good way to escape. However, the number of members gradually began to dwindle when members of the book club were executed. A total of 54 people walked past Hinton's cell on their way to the execution. Hinton could smell the odor of burning flesh from the electric chair, which was also called Yellow Mama because it was next to his cell. Hinton ended up being the last book club member left on death row. They took away my freedom, but I didn't let them take my soul. I learned to live inside my head. I read books, talked to God, and dreamed of the day when the truth would prevail. Hinton created his own world in his head. He imagined traveling the world, dining with Nelson Mandela, and dancing with singer Aretha Franklin. This inner world helped him survive.
You got to love him. He runs the neighborhood.
In 1999, Hinton's case fell into the hands of Bryan Stevenson, a prominent civil rights activist and founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. Stevenson and his team discovered many errors in the investigation. The ballistics analysis on which the prosecution had based its case turned out to be false. Modern tests proved that the bullets from the crime scene did not match the revolver found. But even with the new evidence, it took another 16 years before the case reached the U.S. Supreme Court. In 2015, the court unanimously ruled that Anthony Ray Hinton had not received a fair trial and ordered him released. When I got out, the first thing I did was look at the sun. I hadn't seen it in 30 years. I realized that despite everything that had happened to me, it was still as shining as it was when I went to prison. Anthony Ray Hinton has not been compensated for 30 years of wrongful imprisonment. The state of Alabama, where he was convicted, has not provided him with any financial payment for his wrongful conviction and lost years. This is due to the lack of a mandatory compensation program for such cases in state law. Moreover, no one involved in the falsification or negligent case management was punished. Police officers, prosecutors, and experts responsible for presenting false evidence have avoided any prosecution. They stole 30 years of my life from me, and nobody even said, sorry. I didn't get a dime, but I'm grateful for my freedom and the fact that I can talk about injustice.